In this episode, I want to cover a theme about coverage, and I want to give you some examples, and maybe you find a method on your own, but just to give you an idea what's all about. And here we can see that we have a problem here, and this is not really the problem that I want to discuss here, but it indicates exactly where one projection ends and where another one starts here. And to know exactly where one starts or ends is maybe nice to know, but in the moment we thought maybe from this view this would cover everything, and then we see we needed a second one, this on the left side here. The first one looked good only from this perspective, and we could move the camera a little bit around, but in the moment we go too far, we start already to see here that border. And this border indicates that the projection is fine, but not sufficient for this camera move. As usual, camera projection is dependent on the camera move that finally the rendering camera does. And so the larger the camera move is finally around an object, the more coverage we need. And of course, we could just project everything one time around and have it covered. But that's maybe a little bit too much work. And the idea is, of course, always first to have the least amount of geometry in the scene, then the lowest amount of texture that is needed to get a good result. And of course, not just to work more than we need to do, because time is always not really available. And so we have to find something. Okay, I have discussed some of these techniques in, I think, the first time in 2006 in a 1 week hands-on class that I have given about camera mapping and digital mud painting. And I know for sure that was a long discussion if that is really a method or if it is not. I stick with it. And I know everyone has a different taste, a different workflow, and a different idea about this. So I can only offer here something, and that makes it, of course, a little bit longer than just to say this is the method and follow it or leave it. And so I want to give you several of these methods on hand. But first of all, I want to give you how I have set up the whole scene, and let's have a look into that. I have covered here everything in a layer so it doesn't confuse here, and the original idea was here that we have a material that is just a preset from our content browser here, the wood FO11, just like that, and I have tiled it a little bit because it would have been too big here. So when I go here to attributes, finally you can see it's 5 times around a standard sphere. I haven't changed here anything. It's pretty much all standard. So call up a sphere, attach this material to it that you find in the content browser, set the tile to 5 by 5, and you need 2 light sources here to get a nice light. And I have used here one time a little bit warm light, and as usual the main light has a higher contrast and the fill light has here a negative contrast. That means it's softer, and of course the fill light shouldn't give you a lot of specular, in my case 0. And I like to have it lower in intensity, and normally I like to think in skylight, in blue light for the darker area for the fill light. As you can see here, we have these 2 light sources there and there. Wait, can't see a thing. So here we have the main light. It's this one. So now we see the axis here. Sorry for that. This is the fill light. And then we have here the main light where I have an area for the shadow, which we can see here. Okay, this gave me then exactly what I needed to render to get these textures here. And I have rendered these textures from 2 cameras. I placed them randomly, and I placed them finally exactly where the animation camera is, the orange camera here. I move it so you know exactly where that is. So and stop and end is exactly where I have placed these. My suggestion: normally place the animation between it, not on the endpoint, so you have a little bit wiggle room. But for this example here, it's just fine. And then I just took here in the selection an X. That can be in Y, that can be a 7 or whatever, something that you have not in the selections at all as name. And when I go here, you see this is the material here again. And when I type here something in, it changes to the textures. Maybe not really visible, but very simple method to switch off materials without moving them away. So just to make that point clear, after I have used this shader here, I switched it off, of course. Normally this would be a photograph and from the other side another photograph, and that is then exactly here in this material. The front, this is the image that I took. You see here the light and all of that. It's in the luminance channel, and the texture tag here is set to camera mapping, and of course the camera that has produced this picture is then dragged here into the camera area. The calculation was pressed, so everything is fine. And then the other material, that was the one from the side, and you see on the direction here which one it is. It's now here the left-sided one in this picture, and this was from my side called side. And here the texture tag again set to camera mapping, set to front, and the projection cam is the side. Also here calculation was pressed and nothing has changed here. That produces then exactly this as result based on the animation camera rendering. And the animation camera could have moved between these two cameras more wildly or more smoothly, whatever. And now we have to check out how we can solve that seam here. That is something that I have discussed, and I want to show you that, of course, very quickly here. I have inside of that material an alpha channel, and I have prepared this alpha channel here a little bit. I show you that here in Photoshop. Go to channels, and here is the alpha channel. And what I like normally to do is to take a little bit advantage of the texture inside of the texture. So here for the wood, I took the planks here and a little bit the wavy stuff to paint the alpha channel in the way that it works with the motion that I have already here. So I took here this line on the left side and then went here a little bit darker or grayer into the game. I show you that here. A little bit blurry, of course, to have nice gradients, because it should have been exactly the same texture. It is very precisely when you set up cameras in Cinema 4D. In the real world, these alpha channels should be a little bit more precise. Maybe you find some features. The best is, of course, always to set those lines from the alpha channel where the texture is the darkest, or where you have the most detail density. So any change is not so obvious finally. This was the whole preparation here. The other material has no alpha channel in use, and so I can jump over back to release 14. I have switched this on, and of course we want to see how it looks from the front. And here I can see a little bit of my alpha channel, because the other texture has also some weak points here. But in a moment I move this here back, and I make that big here now, and I render this frame here. You might see not so many problems. I have a problem area here. The alpha channel went too far, so I see a little black spot here, just to give you that as a hint as well. And it would have been easy to fix, but I wanted to show you that those little things can drive you nuts if you forgot them and render that. Here for the tutorial, it's fantastic, of course. I can show you something, and a mistake here is just a value. Anyway, so let's check out which methods we have to see what is finally here inside of our picture. And for that, I want to go here in both materials, and I click first in one, and I go here to the luminance, and you see I have set the color here. And based on the mix mode normal and the mix strength 100%, I get nothing from this color. But you will see immediately when I move the mix strength now to 0%, the color will survive to 100%, and 0 is then in use for the texture. And so I can see here very nicely where the texture goes, and I can see here how far the other texture that is now bluish here went at all. And I can see this from any side here. So I have a very clear idea how much coverage I have from this. And you see here again this mistake, and here it goes a little bit into it. But there is certainly a need for a different alpha channel here, and that needs maybe more than just an alpha channel, maybe another projection, maybe a ProjectionCam fix here, just a camera from the lower position and then paint over it or whatever. So, and that goes of course for the other material as well. I just crank this one to the left side and have here orange as main color, and then I get exactly this here as result. Gives me here an idea that I have overdone it a little bit with the alpha channel. All the mistakes in the tutorial, all a value. For you in a production, that might be very difficult. Okay, this is one method, and it's beautifully to see in any projection here. Here you can see what we get, and the light sources are on. Another little thing that doesn't make sense here at the moment, because we don't need light here. The light is baked in based on the projection. And here you can see the alpha channel, how it works on the surface, and exactly here. This works for all sides where I switch it on, for all views. And I think you get the point already. The beauty of that is when I select all the materials, maybe I have 20 or 100 in it, then I have here all these materials selected, and I can move this slider here at once, and I'm back in the game with my textures. Very simple. So I can select all, move this to a certain degree, and get an idea where I am. Stay with that, move it back, done. And when I go then to select and select filter, the create selection object is grayed out. I want to use it, so there's a little trick. I have to select something in the scene, go to select, and here I can do this now, and then I just deselect this and delete that object and drag my two materials inside of that. I have no idea why it doesn't work without an object first, but materials by itself are not really the idea for that, but it works. So let's have a look. When I go to this, restore the selection, I'm back where I wanted to be. So once more, just to prove the point, restore selection, and I'm in. So you can have a huge selection of materials inside of that list, and it helps you to just get what you want. Name this wisely here, so you have maybe all objects sphere and another one is differently. Works nice for me. And that brings us then to the next point that I wanted to discuss, and that needs exactly here this selection tag. Of course, you can do this by hand. And I go here to basic, and I switch off the luminance, and I switch off the color. And now I want to have, of course, something in the scene where I get from the cameras here, from the projection cameras, the information, what they finally cover. And I don't want to have pictures because, as you have seen, that exactly pictures should be seamless on the object, and that exactly is the problem. We don't see where one starts and one ends, and the coverage would be, of course, a little bit difficult to adjust which one is now more important, where should I work on, and so on. Whatever the reason is why you want to know the coverage, I want to show you one more example, and that is, from my point of view, helpful. Some people think it's not, and you will decide, of course, what is the best method. We take here one spotlight, and this spotlight here can be set to type spot and then to square spot. And maybe you get already my point. The square spot is pretty similar to a camera. So now we know that we have to get the light exactly in sync with the projection camera. The projection camera doesn't show really in the frustum the projection because it is dependent on the render settings. And to make that a little bit more clear, I switch off the visibility of the two cameras that I don't want to have at the moment in this view here. Now I want to have, of course, this camera exactly where the other camera is. We could use the transfer option here, or as I like to have here my PSR, that is normally to find here in the commands, reset PSR in character. I've set it here because I use it more than often. One click when it is a child, and the coordinates are just all to 0, 0, 0. So then comes the main part. We take here these points and move them. That is a little bit tricky because, as I said, it is not exactly the same ratio, and the cameras are not really with the picture, because we need to know the picture finally, and that is here a focal length of 36, and we have different field of views here. Let's have a look. We know, of course, the picture ratio of the whole thing, and we could deal with that, or we go into the editor view, scale this one outside, and then we go with the same aspect ratio here, film aspect ratio. It's 1.778. I copy that here, Command or Control C. Then I go to lights again, go to details, and put this here into the aspect ratio. And then I get something that goes exactly in the opposite direction. So I have to put this here in 1 and slash, so I get here exactly the opposite. And now I have the aspect ratio from this, and by accident, I have to admit, it is now exactly this way. But let's start from something that is not exactly there. Then we have it here roughly. And have an eye on this number here. That's pretty much exactly now this number here, field of view horizontal. Of course it is. So when I have this inside, click elsewhere to agree to that, then we have exactly this size here. Now we need to know, of course, the picture framing of that. I go here to luminance, and I can see here 2K by 2K. So the aspect ratio of the picture is 1:1. That's pretty simple. So I can go here back to my light and type in here a 1. And then I have exactly the aspect ratio of my picture here. So now I have a light source that goes from exactly the camera, the projection camera, to my object. And as far as I like to, of course. No inverse square fell off needed here, just light, because the projection by itself has also no fell off. It's just there. Then I want to have, of course, something here in details, the contrast. I want to have it relatively strong, because the softer I go, the more it crawls along this area here. And let's have a look. When I render this, I get here exactly this two light sources. There's only one, that's okay. So we have now here one light source, and we want to have this one here as well on. So command drag or control drag underneath. Camera shouldn't be copied, just the light. And this light, just one click on PSR, reset. So everything is here 0, 0, 0. It's the same picture size or aspect ratio in the image for the projection, so I can leave this here. And if this focal length or the horizontal view is the same, then I can leave this here as well. Checking out, it's the same, perfect. And the only thing that I want to change here is, of course, again, the color. Let's put this here maybe completely red, and the other one completely green. So let's have a look. I have to switch this on here to make that more visible. Now I have one green and one red. The mixture is yellow. That means wherever here is yellow, I get exactly my coverage. And something is going on here. I don't want to have this material, and I can delete this by now. Let's have a look. I shouldn't see anything here in terms of material. The luminance is on. Okay, so only the color should be on. And also, for example, I can decide if I want to see the alpha channel or not. Now I can see here exactly where my coverage is of each. Where yellow is, here for example, I have from both, and I can pick wherever I want to go with my coverage, from the green one more into the red, or the red more into the green. Wherever is yellow, I have both here for example. And from the top view I can see what's going on, and it's pretty simple. You can see very precisely where you have image data, and you can see as well, based on the contrast, how far it goes, and you can adjust how far you want to have it. Command Control click on both. I put this here up to 100, and the aspect ratio should stay at 1. Render this again, and you can see I have here a very strong border, or when I put here a dash in, just for fun, not as suggestion, just to show you what happens, you get a very soft border here. Whatever you finally like, what works for you best, is of course then the one that wins. And this gives you a clear idea where you have coverage and where not. And the color gives you finally also an idea which camera gives you what light. Okay, I think that covers it. Just some ideas just to give you an idea where you can maybe develop your own ideas. I say thanks for listening. Have fun with it. Bye bye.